is Suit Up Sports. Suit Up Sports. Where opinions are as sharp as a tailored suit. No fluff, no gimmicks, just unfiltered, hard-hitting takes on sports and a whole lot more. It's time to suit up. Now here's your host, DJ the Suit Stout.
Today's Suit Up Sports is brought to you by Neogenics, Charlotte's #1 when it comes to stem cells and regenerative therapy. I'm not saying that because that's what I'm supposed to say. I'm saying that because I've lived it. So is Frank. Nico over at Neogenics is taking care of us. I've had stem cells in my arm. I've had it in my knee. I've had it in my shoulder. You've had it in your back.
Buddy, you ain't lying when you're talking about Neogenics as a life support for us as older guys. Weekend warriors.
Yep.
If you're looking to, kind of replenish your body and get that 30-something filled back, Neogenics is the place for you. I know a lot of Panther players used it. I used it. Got my lower back done.
Yep.
And the best thing about them, buddy, is that they will tell you exactly what it is that you need to do, and they might not be able to help you.
And if they can't treat you, they won't treat you.
That's right.
Yeah, and it's any nagging joint pain, shoulder, neck, back, knees, any of those things, they'll treat it. They do stem cells, they do PRP, and like Frank said, they do a lot of athletes from Thomas Davis to Harold Varner Jr. to Matt Doherty, and I can go to Tony Womack, baseball all-star. It works, and they're honest, like Frank said. Some of their competition they'll treat you just to take the money, whether they know it's going to work or not work. These guys are only going to work with you if they know they can help you. 704-727-6551. That's 704-727-6551 or neogenicstemcells.com. You see it on the bottom scroll of our show, neogenicstemcells.com. Tell them DJ and Frank sent you.
Check them out, bud.
Thank you. Welcome to Suit Up Sports. I'm DJ the Suit Stout, along with 10-year NFL vet Frank Garcia. Frank, how you doing?
I'm doing great, buddy. We've been waiting. It feels like an eternity for this moment. The summer has passed. The heat is starting to trickle away. And fall is starting to smell and feel like it's in the air. High school football started last week.
Yep.
You got some big college games last night, tonight, and this weekend. Some huge implications on what could take place throughout the season. But it's here. It's finally arrived.
It's finally here. I was at the beach this past week with my family and Dylan and his girlfriend Avery and Connor, Colson, Krista, and did some fishing. But we had our dogs with us, and every morning we'd have to get up at like 7 a.m. to walk the dogs.
You had the he-she dog too?
She's been confirmed. The vet made a mistake. She's 100% female.
You're so full of it.
No, I swear. They call her a unicorn now, and that's a whole different reason why. But she's totally 100% female. But yeah, she was there, and she'll never go to the beach again. I'll tell you that. But I'd get up in the morning at 7 a.m. to walk the dogs, and I'm outside, and it's like cool. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. And then this morning I got out and I went out to do some stuff at the pool, and it felt so nice outside. And I'm like, all right, man, it's here. And you and I were even talking about before the show that, doing the show the past 4 or 5 months, during the summertime after football, which we started at the end of football. So we really haven't got to experience football season and how we were both pumped up to get on here today, because now it's here. We've got great games to talk about. Next week, the NFL starts. So you're right, man. It's time to go.
And to your point, I played a round of golf the other day, feeling like I didn't cross the Sahara in Africa. And
you didn't cramp up Africa, and have to pass out.
I didn't have my turban on and my towel over my head and drudging myself to get to the last 2 holes.
Yeah,
I could actually finish and enjoy myself. So yeah, that's when it's nice outside, and the college football is in the air, and so is pro.
It's here, man. And last night it kicked off with some good games. NC State, East Carolina, which is a huge rivalry, has been for a long time. East Carolina and NC State hate each other. And NC State coming off a disappointing year last year. East Carolina in a rebuilding stage as well, new head coach. And NC State gets off to a quick start. CJ Bailey had a great game, by the way, for NC State. East Carolina makes a late run at it, but what a great game to kick off the season.
Well, and it's one of those games for us as Charlotteans that we get to see a lot of our local kids that have gone to high school here in the area playing for some of these teams. And, Mallard Creek was represented, and, some of the schools out in Raleigh and some of the Durham kids were represented, but it was really 2 in-state rivalries where, teams, those 2 teams are kind of, put together by a lot of Charlotte kids, a lot of North and South Carolina kids. And the talent in these 2 states is becoming greater and is starting to become a little bit more well known. But the quarterback for NC State was the best player on the field last night. Yep. He looked like he played at a different speed than everybody. But I was surprised with how fast and well East Carolina was coached. I know they were playing State, but still, it was that point where they kept up with them. I thought State, just because of historically what they've been, they usually get the bigger, faster, stronger kids, and East Carolina feels like, they're kind of the ones that are negated by the State kids. This really kind of the first time State really feels like there's somebody's big brother.
Yep.
Right. When they're playing East Carolina, but they showed why again last night. They won a close one. The game, I don't know, it was really indicative of what the score was. It was a 2017. It felt like State was in control most of the game, but East Carolina just kept fighting along, plugging along, and they're going to win a lot of games this year.
Yeah, it was a very good game to kick it off. Nebraska and Cincinnati was after that. Solid game. Matt Rule, I can't even stand watching the dude.
I'm not a Matt Rule fan.
Me too. I can't even watch him play.
The Riola kid looked good at times. He looked average at times, but he didn't look like a kid that was worth $4.5 million.
But you know what's weird about him and what he looks like? Isn't it kind of weird that this dude tries to look exactly like Patrick Mahomes, tries to play exactly like him, tries to do the finger waggle like him? I mean, he does look like him, but even down to the sunglasses, it's crazy. That's just weird to me.
What's crazy is that, traditional quarterback play has gone by the wayside. The Peyton Manning camps and the Tom Brady's where you throw the ball high, you release it high. It's no longer that way. They don't teach that anymore. They teach the kids to throw sidearm almost, and forget that not everybody was a college baseball player or as athletic as Mahomes is.
Correct.
Right. So everybody's trying to mimic the way that he plays the game. Very similar in basketball to what you see and how the game is being changed by Steph Curry, with the shot and the handles and the dribbling. That's kind of what's taking place in college football with the quarterback play. They're teaching the Mahomes style of how to play the game, but not everybody is a Mahomes type of player. And I think it's hurting the game personally, especially at that position.
And I think the kid's a good player. I just think it's just very weird. I mean, it's one thing to model your game after a player. It's another thing to model your wardrobe and your outfit and your demeanor. I just think it's kind of strange. But you know what? I guess if you're going to
Kobe agrees.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're going to model your game after somebody, obviously Mahomes isn't a bad guy to do that with. But you were talking about the local kids with the East Carolina NC State game. And tonight in Charlotte, we've got a game at Bank of America Stadium. UNC Charlotte taking on App State. I know the tickets have sold very well. The lower bowl sold out, sprinkling into the upper deck. I'm going to be there tonight with some of my UNC Charlotte pals. And
you made the argument that this was a big rivalry game. And I kind of poo-pooed on that a little bit. And I was like, how can it be a rivalry? Charlotte isn't even relevant.
Well, and it's not a rivalry from the standpoint that App State and Charlotte they haven't played before, right? So you've got that, but just because of what you said is that a lot of these kids know each other. They went to high school together. They played against high school each other. App State in certain instances may feel like they're the little brother to Charlotte, but not in football, right? Football, they're well above what Charlotte has done.
They got the national championships.
Yeah,
right?
and they've beat Michigan at Michigan, and so they're much further along in their football program. However, coming into this game tonight, and you and I were looking at the spreads earlier, and the game started with App State minus 7.5, and now it's dropped to 3. So there's a lot of money coming in on Charlotte. And I think the reason why is, first of all, both teams have new head coaches, right? Mm-hmm. So Charlotte brings in Tim Albin, who coached at Ohio, was coach of the year twice. Everyone says a great coach, runs a triple option type of offense, which is good when you're not getting these dudes that you can pay $3-4 million. It's why Navy and Army are always competitive because of the same type of deal. They've got the transfer, Connor Harrell from North Carolina, the quarterback who started a few games last year for them. He'll be the starting quarterback for Charlotte.
Now, when you say they run the triple option, like the Navy triple option, what they're running?
We'll see. I mean, that's what they're saying. I mean, tonight we'll find out. I don't know. I mean, that's what they're saying. He's going to run something similar to that. That's what he kind of ran at Ohio. But on the other side of that, App State, they've got a new head coach as well in Loggins, and he comes from South Carolina. He was the offensive coordinator under Beamer. He's also been an offensive coordinator in the NFL. So Dow Loggins. So both teams have new head coaches. Both teams brought in a lot of new players. I think Charlotte has 43 new players. App State, not as many. Both teams had awful defenses last year. So App State, I believe, is returning 3 of that offense. Charlotte, maybe the same, 2 or 3. I know that Coach Albin he brought 2 of his starting linebackers with him from Ohio, which definitely helps. Charlotte, I mentioned Connor Harrell, the transfer quarterback from Carolina, is going to be a starter. And at App State, you've got the transfer coming in from Vandy. So I think there's a lot of unknowns in this. And I think the reason maybe that number has come down from 7.5 to 3.5 is because 2 new head coaches, and Harrell, by the way, Dow Loggins, the coach for App State, the first-time head coach, a lot of replacement, a lot of new players. So you really don't know what to expect. 2 transfer quarterbacks. So I think maybe, if you're Vegas, or at least the people who are betting this brought that number down, you're thinking, 7.5 was a lot of points. And what could be, I think it could be a high-scoring game because both defenses were so bad last year. They have so many new players. I just feel like it could be a high-scoring game. If you're listening or watching this before the game starts, take the over or the unders because I'm usually wrong. But
to the opposite of what he's saying right now. Well, here would be my argument, and without really knowing much about these programs, other than what everybody else knows, and that's the fact that App State has been kind of the leader in football. Charlotte has struggled in years past. They've gone through multiple head coaches. They don't really have the administrative support that is necessary in order to build a giant program with the amount of student body that they have and the resources that are available to them. So we all know those things, right? What we don't know is the inner workings of how this coach is going to integrate into these programs. The thing that I would argue for App State is that, okay, they may not have the returners, but they still had players in their cupboard, right? They still had the better quality players, in my opinion, that go to App State versus Charlotte. Charlotte's going to get I hate to say it, but they're going to get the leftovers or the transfers or the 5th-year seniors looking to play and come in and, just enjoy, 1 year starting in their college career because they've worked so hard to get there. And I can appreciate that for those players. They just want to play. This might be the last year they ever play organized football, and they want to do it for an organization or a coach that they can win at. So I would argue the only thing is that if you're going to say which backup team would win in a scrimmage from last year's squad, I would take App State, and I'd take it big because those are going to be the players that are being pushed up into their starting roles. Where Charlotte, they were so mediocre.
They were bad.
They were bad. Trying to be nice. They were so mediocre.
And App State was bad last year. App State.
They were bad for App State.
Right. But they had the worst year they've had in a long time.
That's what I said. They were bad for App State.
I'm not sure how full the cupboard was, especially the transfer portal now. Charlotte, like I said, bringing in 43 or so new players and a new head coach. I know that they have brought in some, I know they brought a receiver in from LSU. And I know you do see some big school names on there, but then you always question, okay, well, they obviously weren't playing at that school, but that doesn't, the fact they get recruited there.
They have the talent to get recruited to those schools.
Exactly.
Right. And they just have to bring that talent out to come to fruition. Sometimes, a player just needs a chance. And the other times that player just might not really like football, but God gave him an athletic body to go to LSU or to wherever these schools, and they're going to transfer just because they want a chance to play. So, those are the things that are the unknowns. The thing that scares me about that game is the sharp money's coming in on Charlotte and being down from 7.5 to 3.
That's a lot.
I think it was at 5.5 this morning or yesterday. So it's gone down another 2.5 points. That's not just like coming down. That's like tumbling down.
Yeah.
And I know these smaller schools typically is where you want to make money, in your bets, but it's just it's to the point where I don't know I want to bet the other side now just to make my money back because I don't know who's going to win this game.
Yeah, I'm excited about going. Like I said, I think the atmosphere is going to be great. App State has great fans. I've got a lot of buddies who went there. I was recruited to play soccer there, and I know a lot of my App State fans are going to be there tonight. And I'm going with some of my buddies, my fraternity bros, but also a lot of my dad's buddies who.
So you're going to have Moonshine and Coors Light. They're two different Moonshine is the mountains, obviously.
Yep.
App State's going to bring, their moon, their shine.
Yep.
And or the hooch, and then their Davy Crockett hats.
Yep, they'll be out.
Right, they'll be out. And then Charlotte, what's their tradition? I mean, they're Coors Light, Bud Light, Old E. What are they?
I'm a bad example, but because I pretty much I'm equal opportunity. I drink whatever's in front of me, but I don't know. Like I said, we're gonna go meet at a bar, and a lot of my dad's good friends that I've known since I was probably 4 or 5 years old are going to be there.
Farm sounds like a Charlotte.
I don't know.
Charlotte drink.
I think Charlotte. You're looking at probably the beers, and then I think
craft
bourbon.
beers.
I think bourbon has kind of gotten into college.
Kids
I think
cannot afford bourbon in college.
I don't know, man. I think you got to remember Charlotte is kind of a suitcase college, so I'm not saying they can afford it. They just go do what my sons did. They just come to my house and take it. So I don't think
they're stealing bourbon.
Yeah, they're stealing the bourbon from their dads, and then they're taking it with them.
I got a great story about that.
But
about stealing bourbon from my mom.
Oh yeah, I got a couple of my own, including
she had a little Indian whiskey. We're from Arizona.
Yeah. So
there was this Indian bottle, very, very decorative. It was a white bottle. It had like all the flowery arrangements around it, but I smelled it, and it had alcohol in it. So my mom was a police officer. She knew this story. She would have killed me. But before a wrestling match, we went over and had a couple of sips of that, and you don't want to drink it all, because if they shake the bottle, they're going to know something's missing. But we took a little off the top, and I don't know if it got us drunk or not or whatever, but we took that before a wrestling match, and I don't know if to this day she knows that I did that.
Well, my son Connor, we were at one of our music festivals a few years ago, and him and some buddies were back. We had 2 hotel rooms and a big suite. And so Chris and my wife get back. It's like 3 a.m, and we walk in, and there's a hole in the wall. There's this container shattered all over the floor. 2 of the kids are sleeping, like passed out on pull-out.
No, they're not sleeping. They're passed out.
And then my son is like passed out, half of his body in the condo.
Is this C-Mac or Dylan?
C-Mac. Okay. Yeah. Dylan was there, but Dylan is the responsible one.
Oh, please. Dylan comes across as the responsible one. Dylan is the closet. Hey,
he just gets away with it.
Yeah. He's smarter about it.
He's just smarter
about it.
That's probably true. And Connor, half his body's laying in the condo. The other half's laying out on the patio. He has a speaker next to his head, listening to music, and he's out. And so I'm trying to pick him up. There's a lamp broken. Like, it looked like Hangover. I'm expecting a tiger to be in the bathroom.
Did they have their teeth?
They all have their teeth.
Yeah.
I get them up off the ground, and I'm like, I'm not going to say anything now. It's worthless. They're out. I go back, and there's a half gallon of like some vodka I never heard of. It probably costs $10 for a half gallon. And it's got about half left. And so I'm like, all right, I'm going to do the reverse trick that what kids do to their parents. So I go in the bathroom, and I pour damn near all of it out and fill it with water and place it right back to where it was. I don't know if they ever realized I did that or not, but next morning I will give them credit. I hear all the boys get up the next morning at like 7:30 in the morning, and they leave. And I'm thinking, all right, they're probably going to get breakfast or something. And when I get up, they had went to Lowe's. They'd matched the paint. They spackled the wall, sanded it, painted it, cleaned up everything. And I don't know if they did it because they hoped that maybe I hadn't seen it yet.
And they added more water to the bottle.
And probably added more water to the bottle, or probably got another half gallon of it. But yeah, we've been there. So yeah, the Charlotte 49er game tonight, I'm excited about, man. Get to see a lot of old friends, a lot of my dad's old buddies. And if he was here, he would be really fired up, because he was a big App State guy too. Both my sisters went there. So I'm really excited about that. There's also 2 other games tonight before we jump into the big dog. Georgia Tech at Colorado. Deion Sanders is in the news all the time. I actually like Deion. I think I believe in a lot of his messaging and the way he is with these young kids. But they lose their 2 best players, in Shador and Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter was their best player on both sides of the ball. And they weren't that good already. Georgia Tech has been coming. And that dude can coach. He's got a quarterback. Georgia Tech's laying 4.5 at Colorado. So I won't be able to watch that game because I'll be at the Charlotte game. But if not, I will be all over that. I think that's going to at least be a fun game to watch. And then Auburn versus Baylor. You've got SEC Auburn, who they haven't had a quarterback in a while, man, and the rest of their team has been pretty doggone good. So if they usually
played pretty good defense in the SEC, so you can count on that.
Exactly. So if their quarterback can play, then they're -1. Baylor's is going to be improved. They've also got a good quarterback. They've got a great running back. So another game tonight that's a little bit later. So hopefully I'll get to catch some of that. But tomorrow tomorrow's the first Saturday that we're going to get to wake up in the morning and
college game day.
College game day.
I can't wait for college game. I tell you what, I used to love college game day, but McAfee has added so much flavor and swag to that I love watching him with the field goal kicking.
Everything.
To Saban being on there and just kind of sitting there stoic.
Yeah.
To McAfee getting on there and stirring everybody up.
I
and
couldn't agree with you more.
He and Desmond Howard's funny little laugh that he just cracks up, and then it's just a great group. And
Herb
Corso
Street is awesome.
I think this will be the first year that Corso's not there.
Yep.
Unless they stroll him out.
Yeah, they just did a really nice. I don't know if you saw it on ESPN. They did a really nice documentary, paying tribute to him, and had so many celebrities, just telling him
he's been the catalyst of that show
100%
for so many years. And when he'd come out at the end and put his hat on or whatever it was, everybody go wild. And McAfee has replaced him very nicely in a different way.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like McAfee because of his antics and all that stuff. But I agree with you. I mean, listen, you're doing this show from a college campus. You've got thousands of college kids lined up outside watching your show, drinking at 6 a.m. with crazy signs and all these things. You need somebody that's going to get those guys fired up. And I think he does a great job.
I absolutely loves how he bucks the system.
Yeah.
He gets the crowd going. He knows exactly what they're going to say. I can't remember if it was at Ole Miss or wherever it was at where he got the crowd going. And it might have been LSU where they just – they yell out there and the profanities and it's on national TV. And all the guys on stage are just sitting back, uncomfortable, but finding it hilarious. And I think, like I said, I think he does a great job with that. So I can't wait for that tomorrow.
Me, you wake up and you got game day on, and then you're going through your bets of the day and deciding what bets you're going to take, and then you're texting your buddies what bets are you going to take, and then it's just dial in at noon. And at noon, guess what? Ohio State, Texas. At Ohio State, 1 versus 2 at noon,
right out the gate.
And you got last year's national championship team. You've got Texas, who the number 1 team in the country, Arch Manning, who everyone's talking about.
We're gonna find out.
We're gonna find out right away. And Ohio State finally made the decision on their quarterback. But listen, and by the way, before I forget, Jeremiah Smith. The front runner for the
phenom wide receiver,
no doubt, who's unbelievable, and I can't wait to see him because evidently he's put on weight and speed, which that's scary because the dude is a freak. A lot of people thought he'd be the number 1.
Where's the game at?
The game's in Ohio State. So you got Arch Manning coming on the road, bringing this Texas team that is loaded with talent against the reigning national champions at home, first game of the year.
This should really, I view this. I mean, this is a game that happens in like January, like the end of January, middle of January.
Like the playoffs.
This is a national championship type of game. Very first big game out of the gates. Yep. I mean, college football doesn't do a lot of things right, but this one, I feel like they've got it right. And these two teams all year have been thinking about have circled this date.
Oh, yeah.
And have practiced, have prepared, have thought about, have worked towards this game and this game alone, because the winner of this game is going to position themselves at the very top of college football. Right out of the gate.
Yep.
You got 1 versus 2. Where's Texas? 1?
Well, yeah, 1 versus 2.
Ohio State's 2.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when's the last time we've seen this? Is like the old school when we were back in school, Florida State, Miami. Yeah. Right. Miami versus Penn State, and that where we get to see those 1 versus 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't wait for it.
Yeah, and if you're a fan of either one of those teams, obviously you want to win. And Texas, by the way, has been favored around 1.5. It wouldn't surprise me if it goes off as a pick.
Texas, so a lot of people think that Texas is the better team.
Yeah, I mean, I think on paper Texas probably has the most talent. Ohio State lost both their running backs, who are both in the NFL. They lost their 2 of their receivers.
They
reload, and they got Julian Sayin is the quarterback that won the battle. He's a transfer from Alabama, so I'm sure he can spin it. But
I don't know. Alabama didn't have that great of a backup quarterback, so I'm not sure how well he can spin.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, the fact he won the battle, Ryan Day, an offensive guy. But the one thing I think that I was talking to a buddy of mine, that's a big Ohio State fan yesterday, and I was like, look, not that you want to lose, But if you're going to lose, the first game is the game to lose, and especially if you're losing to the number one team in the country, because the way the playoffs go now, if you lose that first game, that one loss isn't going to kill you. Whereas if you lose a game in week 11 or 12, it could be, it could be detrimental.
Well, Ohio State last year obviously proved a lot of naysayers wrong. And Ryan Day took a big step forward, as far as the Buckeyes' eyes go. That fan base is rabid, very similar to Texas, very similar to Alabama.
Yeah.
They have an SEC feel, so does Texas, when you're talking college football. And Sarkisian, on the other hand, this is a big game for him because his biggest bugaboo, wherever he's been, whether it's USC, whether it's Washington, before this, was he can't win the big game. And even at Texas, they've been close. They put themselves in position, but it's almost like he outcoaches himself and gets too tricky or fancy instead of just doing what they do better than what the other team does well and finding a way to win. So it's a big game, not just for Texas, but it's a huge game for Sarkisian, because is he the guy with all this talent that can get him over the hump?
Yeah, and listen, there's a lot of pressure on him. He's getting paid a lot of money, and the boosters are paying those players a lot of money. But it's funny. We've seen
so many storylines.
So many. We've seen coaches or athletes in the past. I mean, Tommy Fleetwood is a great example. And on the PGA, the dude was winning every tournament and then blowing it on the last day. I think 6 times this year.
Keep putting yourself in position.
Exactly.
And learn from your mistakes. Remember those feelings and what not to do, and that's what Fleetwood did.
Yep, and he won last week, and once he gets over that hump, usually you see him take off. Sarkisian,
that's the difference between an individual sport and a team sport. A team sport, this isn't the same team. Even though the same head coach, you have a different quarterback. You're going to have a different running back. You're going to have some different linemen. This isn't the same team that they've had. So, I think the pressure more falls on Sarkisian because he's the one constant.
Yeah, I agree. It'll be interesting to see, but that's right at noon, man. And I'm fired up to see that. You got Alabama, Florida State tomorrow as well.
What time's that night game? I hope.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to be so drunk.
Let me make sure what time that game is.
I'm going to be so drunk tomorrow.
Let me double check that.
I think it's a 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock game.
Let me double check.
I hope so. I hope they don't put that right after.
No, we're going to need a break after that game.
Those kids will die in that heat.
It's at 3:30.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's 3:30.
Hey, where's the game at?
Florida State.
Oh my God, those kids are going to die.
So
I pray for them.
But the interesting thing about that is, again, Florida State has brought in a ton of new players. They had a horrible year last year, ton of new players, and then Alabama, ton of talent. We've talked about it. They've got to have a quarterback, which we'll see if this kid can play. They're going to have running backs. They're going to have receivers. They got Williams is one of the best receivers in the country. They always have a great defense. But DeBoer, this is a big season for him because you can't lose. You can't have
not at Alabama.
Not at Alabama. You got to win this year, and you got to win
DeBoer,
big.
What you just said, I think, kind of rings true to me because what he's been able to do, when he had Penix at Washington, was he was able to groom him for a couple of years to understand and see the same things that he saw as he was a quarterback versus a coach calling the plays. Now he has a quarterback that has been there for a year. Now that he has his guy, he's been able to kind of mentor him and build him and go out and find the guy that fit what he was looking to do. Milrose wasn't that guy, and you couldn't not play Milrose because he was a NFL type quality player. So he was kind of in a tough place last year. New program, new message, a quarterback that wasn't his, that he had to play to his style. So he almost had to coach to Milrose versus allowing the quarterback to kind of understand and grasp his concept. So I agree with you. This is a huge year for him as a coach because DeBoer now has his guy that he's been under him for a year that he went out and handpicked to bring to his program to surround him with all this talent that Alabama is going to have and see if he can be the guy. Yeah, I'm excited just to see, what Alabama brings to the table and then how Florida State rebounds from a bad year last year. But you're talking about a night game. Florida State, let's talk about them real quick, right? Yep. We didn't really – I know you touched on it. But what they did last year was what I was fearful of in college football is hiring mercenaries to come and build your program and nobody blend and nobody play or gel well together. But we're just a bunch of guys that are going to be selfish out here playing. I think that coach has a lot to prove with those players because he got some good players.
Yeah.
Right. He got a lot of great talented recruits last year and cherry picked the guys that he wanted. I think for him, it's a big year because now that you have your guys, the continuity that you build and the standard that you bring as a head coach, are these guys, have they bought in?
Mm-hmm.
Or are they just still selfish mercenaries that are going to go out there and play for themselves? I think it's a huge year for Florida State and a huge opportunity for him to put himself in a position to talk about a national championship where 2 years ago
they were in it.
They should have been in. They got screwed.
They got screwed out of the playoffs. So you're right. I agree. So I think that'll be a very interesting game for the reasons that we just discussed. But talking about, being drunk at night, the night game is a doozy. And
are we going to have to be drunk for it?
I think you already will be, but I think everyone in the stands there are definitely going to be.
LSU must be playing somewhere.
It's LSU at Clemson, the Battle of Death Valley. Dabo Swinney with one of the best quotes I've heard so far this year, where they said, "This is the first game where Clemson's selling alcohol inside the stadium."
Oh boy!
And so they asked Dabo,
and there is no. Have you been to Clemson?
Oh, I have many times. I saw the Panthers play there for years. I've seen Clemson play there.
So when I say there is nothing else to do at Clemson but drink, there is nothing else to do at Clemson but drink. So you're going to get a bunch of those rednecks out there at Clemson from like 10 o'clock watching all these games, tailgating in Clemson, and then sell alcohol to them. They might not make it.
Well, here's what Dabo said. I thought was great. So they asked him, hey, look, what do you think the fact this is the first game that alcohol will be sold inside the stadium is going to change the environment? And he goes, listen, it might be the first time they're selling alcohol in the stadium. It ain't the first time alcohol's been in the stadium.
That's very true.
And he's totally right on that. So I don't know what a difference that'll make.
So true.
But, listen, Clemson's a team who a lot of people are picking to win the national championship. And when I say a lot of people, I mean, I would say maybe 3 out of 6 or 7 analysts. I mean, just this week, I've seen a lot of guys pick them. They've got Klubnik at quarterback, who had a huge year last year. I know you and I both need to see a little bit more of him.
I don't know if he had a huge year.
38 touchdowns, I think 4,000 yards.
Again, he's playing. So I will give you this, right? I'll give him this, and I'm not trying to, crap on him as a quarterback because I think he's a good player, but he's playing against, the ACC,
mm-hmm.
right? And the bad part of the ACC. This isn't the ACC coming in there,
nope.
With LSU. And I don't think LSU is maybe as good or talented as they've been in years past, but they're going to be better than any other team that they have played in the ACC.
I'll tell you this much, Clemson's ranked 4th, LSU 6th. And the 2 quarterbacks in this game are both first-round picks. And so there's a lot of talent on the field. Brian Kelly, I'm a big Notre Dame fan, was a Notre Dame coach for a long time, left to go to LSU. I can't stand the dude. I didn't mind him at Notre Dame. Now I can't stand him. I think he's turned into a clown. But, known to be an offensive guru. And I saw a stat that I want to say since he's been there, LSU has not even been ranked like in the top 100 of rushing, and they got running backs. I mean, they putting dudes in the NFL, and
that was his big knock at Notre Dame,
right? And
he couldn't win those games because he tried to get too cute or too fancy, and couldn't recruit the players that the other schools were getting.
He's already come out talking smack about LSU's a real Death Valley and that, whatever. So there's a little bad blood there. Obviously, 2 great teams, 2 great coaches, and I do think Brian Kelly's a very good coach. But that's the night game, man. And I know I've got my first fantasy football draft tomorrow. Me and my buddy Mike Makita are doing a team together in the league with a guy that we used to do it through college forever with, and we're getting back the old group, and we have a fantasy draft at 5:00, and I'm like, all right, look here, and it's a very intensive draft. It's auctioning and all contract is crazy.
So you buy the players,
you buy the players in an auction against other guys, and you have to put contracts on them. There's all kinds of rules that I still need to brush up on, but my point is, by 7:30. This draft better be over, or I'm just going to be just drafting whoever. Give me this guy for $1.
Auto draft.
Yeah, just give me give me that guy for $1 because I can't wait to watch this.
Give me auto draft for the cheapest price possible.
Yeah, I mean we're going to have to do something because by 7:30 I want to be nice and lubed up and
what's crazy? And I didn't even think about this, and I'm sure they do. But you know how people are using? Are you a big AI guy?
You know what's funny? I wasn't, but with the business that my wife and I own in marketing, when it started coming out, we had to get ahead of it because there's a lot of things that we can use it for. My son Dylan actually is dove into it pretty heavily in ways that we can use it for our clients. So yeah, I am, and it's unbelievable.
So my question would be, you know how smart AI is, and you know how much information they have. It's surprising to me that people don't use AI more to make like investments and things like that, but to pick their fantasy football teams.
Well, they do. And it's funny, Chat GPT or Grok, whichever one you use, there are models now. So for handicapping, I follow some guys on Twitter that use AI to pick games. Now, again, that there's no heart and soul when you do that. There's no feel. But what I like it for is the
just strict analytics.
Exactly. I like the stats that they provide and the analytics they provide. But there are models that there's services that you can pay for that are all AI. Same with investments. But
why not fantasy football?
Don't think for 1 second that I won't be using it tomorrow before the draft to get sleepers that maybe I'm not looking for.
I'm picking. You just talk to your Chat GPT. Say, I have the 5th pick. This is who I have available. I'm looking for. This is the type of league I play.
What's the average auction price he's gone for in other auctions?
You set them up. You set your Chat GPT. You have those conversations before this type of league I'm playing, and then you get him geared up or her geared up, and then they can just spit out the information.
Yep.
And I would be interested to see if that was available, or if you could utilize that, because I think you still have to be smart enough to ask the right questions to put you in position to make the right moves.
Well,
but
the one thing I'm going to use it for sure is I'm going to have it give me a list of players and what their average auction price has been. So for instance, let's just say Bryce Young and leagues, and I'll give the criteria what my league is set up to do. In leagues like this, what has been the average auction price for Bryce Young? So at least then I'll have a dollar amount. Let's just say he's going for $15. I'll know when
he's overvalued or he's undervalued.
100%. Right. So I think that's a great point. I think AI, and I'm sure if we Googled it, I guarantee you there are packages, AI packages you can buy right now that will do your fantasy draft for you.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, 100%.
So I was saying, instead of just going
Dylan, by the way, get on that, son. You can start your own AI fantasy football, fantasy baseball, basketball, all those things. And
if fantasy football, from what everybody says, and football in general, and sports in general, is based on analytics, and we use that to measure, the engage, who we're going to take, how much we're going to bet, all the poker that goes into this, and the calculations, with the odds and the stats and all the things that go with this. That would be something that I feel like would be a great kind of test to think that if they're as good as what they say they are, let's see how they stack up.
Well, I'll tell you this much. Every team now, definitely in football and baseball, definitely baseball. I think baseball uses the analytics too much, in my opinion, but coaches do. But every team now has an analytic department that uses all these type of things. Baseball, I think, is the most notorious, going back to the Moneyball days. But every team has an analytics department. Some teams spend a lot more money than others. I know the Mets, for instance, in baseball have a huge analytics department. Cleveland Indians, huge. So a lot of these teams do, but if it's found its way to football, it's found its way to college football and college sports. So you're right. It plays a big role. And what'll be interesting is to some of the things that I look at tomorrow. Let's just use fantasy football for an example, to look back after the season and say, let me give them a report card. Were they right on this? Were they wrong on this? Because, it is analytics. And that's the thing you got to understand also, is there's no heart in there. There's no competitiveness in there. There's no, what guy's going to play hurt in there. There's no, what guy's going to get put in the right position by his coach, so you are truly looking at it for just data.
But
right?
But stats and odds, they're like, the numbers don't lie.
Yeah. That's
right. I mean, when you look at the percentages of, let's say, a calculated hand and how many times this wins, those have already been done.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sure for poker, you're a big poker player.
That's what I'm talking about for poker.
Yeah.
How many times pocket aces lose it, or whatever once the flop happens, what's the percentages?
Yeah.
And the pot odds. You calculate all this in there, and it spits out an equation of what that should be. So the reason why Vegas is built, because over time. Right, that equals the amount of odds and stats that stand true.
Yeah, no doubt. I'll be using it tomorrow for sure. We got Joe Person from The Athletic joining us after this. We're going to talk some Panther football.
Great catching up with Joe.
And Joe's always great.
Best hair in the business.
Covers the Panthers as well as anybody. And we're lucky and sharp. We've got some very good beat writers. But before we get to him, I want to just finish with a couple more college games, because the lineup already is outstanding. And then you get to Sunday.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm in a little tough spot on Sunday because Sunday is my wife's birthday. And so her whole family's coming, and she's invited a bunch of her girlfriends down. So it's going to be a birthday party for her
on Sunday.
On Sunday.
Where are they going?
No, they're coming here.
Oh, the girls are coming here.
They're coming here, which means I'm going to be the butler, right? I'm going to be the guy making sure I take care of her and make sure her day goes great. But at the same time,
I got a perfect suggestion. But finish.
Yeah, so here's the thing, and I've already told her
your conundrum that you're in.
Conundrum. I already told her this, by the way. We'll see how it goes. My guess is by 7:30 when Notre Dame plays at Miami on Sunday night.
They'll be gone.
She'll be. No, I don't know if they'll be gone, but she'll be juiced up. She won't care what.
That could go one or two ways.
Trust me, I'm trying to cover every angle here. But that
first, could go one or two ways.
But first,
because I've seen them both.
You've seen them both, but at 3:30. You got South Carolina at Virginia Tech.
That's a great game.
And you got Beamer going back to Virginia Tech. So there's going to be a lot of that stuff going on.
Well, not the Beamer, but his son.
Yeah. But still he grew up in that program. In that environment. Is his father obviously is a legend. And Virginia Tech, I don't know if you've seen the game there before, but
I've been to a game.
Yeah, you did. You might have went with me to the LSU.
No, I've been to a game where I've sat there and the Inner Sandman comes on.
Yeah, man,
and the entire press box starts shaking.
It's an electric environment, and Virginia Tech has been down the last couple of years. They seem to get off to slow starts.
They know how to party out there too, by the way.
They'll have a party, but that game's at 3:30, and and I know you have too. In the SEC, I've always hated all the SEC teams. I'm just, when I'm a Notre Dame guy, right? So I hate the SEC. I respect them. They're the best football in the country.
It's because they've been your daddy, but I understand.
Well, they've been everybody's, really. But I've become a quasi Gamecock fan because over the years I've been to a lot of games there. Even when they were awful, it's still a great time. The fans are great. One of my good buddies, Justin Goff, his whole family, are Gamecocks. They all go there. I don't think they even give their kids a choice. You're a Gamecock, shut up and like it. Although the kids are great Gamecocks, and I know
I just can't understand how a grown man tells his son, "You got to root for Cox."
Well, that's a saying that they hear quite a bit. But your son Braxton, I know, obviously has gravitated to the Gamecocks. I know.
I always make him say "game."
Well,
yeah, he's not just saying
thank you.
Go Cox.
Exactly. But he's a big Sellers fan.
He is a huge
I know he got to meet him this offseason at a camp. He's got a jersey.
I've been around football my entire life, as you know. Whether it's playing, coaching, I've seen really good organizations, I've seen really good coaches, and unfortunately I've seen some really bad ones too. I can tell you this at South Carolina, Beamer has done a tremendous job, and I can't overstate that enough. He's done a tremendous job of getting this team to believe, having an identity, building that identity, and developing a culture.
Yep.
Right. Very similar to what you saw Saban do when he was at Alabama. I'm not saying he's Saban. I'm not saying South Carolina is going to be Alabama. I'm not saying those things.
Yep.
But the same trends are taking place at South Carolina.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with a guy like Lenore Sellers. When you see a guy that comes from that state and goes and plays for that school and has the ability to transfer to any other school in the country,
exactly what I was going to say.
And name his price,
for more money.
and name his price and decide to stay at home, that tells you a lot.
Yep.
Tells you a lot about the coach.
Yep.
Tells you a lot about the culture, and it tells you a lot about the program and the direction of that program
and the player.
And it tells you a ton about the player as well.
Yeah.
But he made a decision to stay there for all of those reasons, which is the reason why I think South Carolina has something special going on and brewing. I think a lot of it starts with Sellers. The defense is going to have to play better and step up, and they're going to have to learn how to win those big games and believe when they step into Alabama or LSU or Georgia, because they have a suicide schedule.
Is brutal.
They have a suicide schedule.
Yep.
But know and expect to win those games. And I think Beamer is one of the best coaches in college football, because I think he has established that, or is establishing that at South Carolina. I can't say enough good things about that program and the direction they're headed.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm excited. So that's at 3:30. So I'm going to have that on all my TVs outside. So even
that's
if
the game I'm most excited about, other than maybe, the obvious Ohio State, Texas, which takes place tomorrow at noon. That's the game on Saturday, and also Notre Dame
Sunday.
too. Yeah, I'm sorry, Sunday. That I'm looking forward to. You didn't even mention Notre Dame.
Well, and that's the game that I can't wait for. I'm a big Notre Dame fan. They're going on the road to Miami, which Notre Dame has always played awful in Miami. Miami was much improved last year, but they lose Cam Ward, first round pick to the NFL. Their defense was horrible last year. Notre Dame's coming in with a great defense. They always have a great offensive line. They have the best running back in the country in Love.
What time is that game?
That's at 7:30. But the thing with Notre Dame is they've got a true freshman quarterback coming in playing. So you never know what you're going to get. And I think we've got a great coaching staff. Marcus Freeman last year when Notre Dame made their run through the playoffs, and everybody that even hated Notre Dame would see him speak after these games. I can't tell you how many texts I would get going, dude, that guy right there. If I had a son that was looking to go play college, that's who I'd want to play for.
Marcus Freeman is a Beamer type coach. He's obviously at Notre Dame, which has more history, has the culture already developed, has all the all the things that college football is about. It's centered. They have their own football station, their own network. So
yep.
Notre Dame has been a big part of college football, and when Notre Dame is better, college football is better.
Yep.
That's how much they mean to college football.
Yeah.
All that being said, Marcus Freeman has done a great job there. A play away against Ohio State from winning that game. In the semifinals, Ohio State goes on to win the national championship. And winning that game. Notre Dame seemed to be outmatched with a lot of their players being injured. But they fought till the end.
Yeah.
And they fought for Freeman. There was games where they had been behind, they'd come back. The problem with that game, I'll tell you right now as a player, I don't care
the heat,
how much you prepare, how good you are. When you get off of that plane in southern Miami.
Well, tell the story, because let's give a little background to this. Frank, when he was at University of Washington, won a national championship.
In 1991.
1991, they get on the plane in Washington.
This is 1993. We go back to play them.
Okay.
And we had both in 91 been co-national champions.
With Miami, right?
With Miami.
Yep.
So we get to play them in 93, 94, the Whammy in Miami.
Yeah.
Right? That was the name of the game. They had a fixed 56-game home streak. This was the old Orange Bowl, however. This is not the new stadium that they play in now. But this was the last year of the Orange Bowl, and you could see the graves of all the teams that had come before.
Oh.
When you think of 56 games and how many of those games were home, how many years is that? 10 years?
Oh,
9 years of undefeated at home.
Yep.
And we understood.
That was Jimmy Johnson.
We understood very quickly why. That was actually Dan Erickson.
Okay. He took over after Johnson left.
That was Erickson.
Erickson.
Dennis Erickson era, right, when he was there. But he took right over and they won the championship in 91 with him. So when you look at that program and the heat coming from Washington, you think of Washington in September, October, November. It was November when we played them. It's probably 60 degrees, 55 degrees, 60 degrees. Very similar climate to Notre Dame, South Bend.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get off that plane and you feel that wave of air, it takes your breath away. And after warm-ups, we got there a day early to try to acclimate to the weather. After warm-ups, we go through a walkthrough. I was drenched and had to get an IV because I was afraid I was going to cramp up. And you can't get used to that heat. And I don't care if it is at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't care if it's at 10 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning, or I don't care if it's at 7 o'clock at night. That humidity is no joke, and it'll take the breath away from Notre Dame. So if they don't have depth, if they aren't hydrated, if they aren't prepared, which I don't know how you can unless you show up a couple days early.
I'll say this, they're getting lucky because at game time being at 7:30 at night, it looks like the temperature is going to be around 81, but there's thunderstorms. So there's going to be rain. So that's going to cool it off a little bit. It's going to be different. The
humidity in that stadium at 81 degrees is going to make it feel like it's 100.
Plus with the rain and it's going to be.
You're not going to be so. If they're not, I guess my point to this is that if Notre Dame doesn't come to this game prepared for all of that and is in shape, that's going to be the battle of attrition is going to win that game.
Yeah, I think that'll be a good game. Miami, obviously, team on the rise last year, too. They had a lot of guys they had replaced, but they bring in Carson Beck, the quarterback from Georgia last year.
Overrated.
I agree with you, but he'll be starting for them. So, it isn't like the cupboard's bared there by any means. Miami's top 10 team as well, as is Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame has arguably the best running game in the country, definitely the best running
and
back.
Something to prove after last year.
Yeah, so I think I'm excited about that. And then
I think Notre Dame rolls them.
I think they will.
I think it's a 2-touchdown
We're going to make some picks here in a minute before we get to Joe Person. But the last game of the week is another game that I'm excited about. And
more?
There's one more. And it's TCU, who's always solid, at North Carolina. It's Bill Belichick's debut.
That game's here?
It's in Chapel Hill.
Oh, it's in Chapel Hill.
And so Belichick's first home game, evidently, we always make fun of Carolina, their game day. If you've been to a game at Keenan, it's wine and cheese. The crowd leaves early, gets there late. It's just never a crowd that is
the aluminum jungle,
right?
Is what
normally.
The nickname. Yes.
Now Belichick comes in, so the excitement is as much as they've ever had. Number one, number two, they've actually put money into the game day experience. So they've put a lot of money into.
They made the blue zone bigger?
Well, like I said, they're putting nickels in your penny loafers instead of pennies. No, but they put a lot of money into it. Belichick obviously has brought in a ton of new players, new quarterback from South Alabama, Gio Lopez, who dual threat guy, who a lot of people are very high on. I know a lot of the players call him Magic Johnson because some of the throws he makes and with his body contorted and kind of like you talked about with Mahomes and a lot of the ways these kids are doing these days. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see right now TCU is about a 3-point favorite. You got to think, North Carolina, if you're a Carolina fan and know anything about their football program over the years, and Frank and I aren't Carolina fans, but
I'm a Carolina fan. I root for Carolina
football. We actually don't mind them as much. Basketball is where we can't stand them, but football, they always have great talent. They always have great recruits, but on defense, it's always a sieve. Their defense is always porous.
They don't do the things that we've talked about with the tackling and the practicing and things like that. It'll be interesting to see how Belichick has come in with that culture, because a lot of the staff that had been there before was so concerned about the health and the safety of players, which is very right to be concerned about, but that was a priority over teaching the necessity of being a football player and going out there and taking the body blows in order to make the tackles and to make the blocks and things of that nature. So there's a balance there, and it'll be interesting to see how Belichick has balanced that. The other thing that'll be interesting to see for me is how he acclimates to the college game.
Yeah.
One of the things that, people don't understand maybe, is the mind of which Belichick works. And, having played against him for many years, having watched him, having admired him as a coach and as a coordinator, the matchups that he creates and the challenges that he presents to defenses is going to be interesting to me, just because he's going to have more flexibility with gadgets at college football that he would in the NFL. In NFL, those things don't work. In college, it's part of a package that you use, that you incorporate with to, go out there and make splash plays.
And listen, the big holdover that he kept from the previous coaching staff is Freddie Kitchens. Freddie Kitchens was a coordinator in the NFL for a long time. I think he even was an interim coach for the Browns for a while, was at Carolina. So he's the offensive coordinator. The fact Belichick kept him shows the respect he has for him. But, the one thing I'll say to these to people, and it's funny because I'm the guy now defending Carolina, right? But the one thing I will say is this. He brought his son, who was a defensive coordinator at Washington last year, and he brought them from like the 90th ranked defense to the top 30. If there's one thing,
Penix had a lot to do with that too.
Well, but last year when Penix was gone and Washington struggled a little bit, their defense was much better than it had been. The one thing else, and they brought some of the players from Washington with him on defense. But the one thing that I say is this: if I asked you, if I said, all right, you're going to bet on one of these things, I'm going to tell you, you're going to bet. If there's one thing about Belichick taking over a team, I would think the one thing that you would bet, if anything, would be their defense is going to be pretty good. Definitely better. You got to think that Belichick, being maybe the best defensive coach ever, you got to believe that their defense is going to improve. They've always have receivers going to the NFL every year, running backs going to the NFL. Heck, they have quarterbacks getting drafted in the NFL, almost every year, with Howell and Drake May and even going back to the kid Trubisky. So they've got talent on offense. Kitchens, I think is going to do a good job with that offense. But defensively, where they need the most help, you got to think that's the one thing Belichick came in and said, I'll tell you this much. I don't know what we're going to score, but last year, I think in 5 or 6 of their losses, they gave up over 35 points. I just don't see that happening under a Belichick defense. Now, TCU, always solid. They had a down year last year, but they're always a very good team. So they're going to start off with, they're not starting off with a ACC cupcake. They're starting off with TCU, who's a legit football program.
Right. And I think this is not going to be a great indicator, on where Belichick or what Belichick has done with this defense, because TCU is a traditional run down your throat type of team on the offense and win on defense. So if you were to ask me the style of play in which Belichick would fit in, TCU would be the perfect type of style that he would want to win games with. Play a great defense, run the football, make some plays on offense and win the game, right?
Yeah.
We're going to be a defensive-minded team. That's TCU in a nutshell. For North Carolina, they've never won on defense, except, maybe going back to Lawrence Taylor days, in the late 80s and early 90s when, they had some really good defenses, and Dre Bly years and those defenses that they had back in the 90s. But since then, they've really kind of struggled on that side of the ball, as you pointed out. But I think the one thing that Belichick is going to do is understand clock management, understand situational football better than anybody else.
Yep.
I think that's the thing that he is a stickler on, and he gets his team to understand those types of moments and those situations. That being said, I think North Carolina's starting group will be very competitive. What happens when they get tired, the defense gets tired? The problem with North Carolina on the defense side is they don't have the depth, right? The starters, they can play with anybody.
They brought in a ton of portal guys, and so
developing that depth,
yeah,
developing that depth is what I'm most interested in watching about with North Carolina, because when the starter goes down, let's say he's a 7, you go to a 3, right? Because the backup just can't play. Right. Or he's there. My guy needs a breather. I got to throw somebody else in there here. And I'm kind of poo-pooing on, the backup players for North Carolina. They're still good football players. They're just not, right, they're not starter quality guys, right?
Yep.
They're freshmen, they're first-year guys, they're walk-on guys that have worked their way into it, don't have the speed or the talent, to compete against the top-level teams on a consistent basis, right? So that being said, Belichick doesn't make tackles. Belichick doesn't, there's been plenty of times in the past where defensive coordinators, have dialed up perfect plays and the offensive player break a tackle, right? The offensive player make a defensive
players got to make plays.
Yep. The players have got to go out there and play. And I just don't know if North Carolina is still going to have enough players to match some of these top teams. Now they'll win more games, I feel like, because, they're going to have enough talent to beat the
they've got an easy schedule. They got a pretty easy schedule.
And the teams that are on their schedule and that the NC States, I think they'll be better than NC State. I think that they'll be better than teams like ECU. They'll be better than teams like Stanford, whoever else they play on their bracket. But they're not going to beat the Clemsons. They're not going to beat the Georgias. They're not going to beat the Notre Dames. They're not going to beat the Ohio
I don't think
States.
anybody's expecting them to do that this year. I mean, I think this year is year one of Belichick. So, I think they hope to see improvement. I think they hope to see a much better defense than they've seen in the last 20 years. And I think they hope to see.
Let's also not forget that Belichick did get fired when he was at Cleveland without Tom Brady as a head coach.
People like to say that too. I mean, listen.
So, when you have Tom Brady, right, and you have him as your GOAT and the guy that's orchestrating and making everybody else better, it's easy to be a pretty good coach. Right?
Look, when you have the best ever at quarterback, it definitely helps. But I think Carolina's in good hands. I'm excited to see that game. You just have to hope, so week 2, you got to hope Carolina's not looking past TCU because they play at UNC Charlotte the next week. And I'm joking. But I mean, what a matchup that is with Charlotte, App State, and then at home against Carolina, TCU, and then at Charlotte. So the first 2 weeks gets off to a bang. Before we go to Joe Parsons from The Athletic to talk Panthers, let's make some quick picks.
Okay.
All right? So let's start off. We got Charlotte, App State. App State is -3.5. Frank, who you got?
I'm taking App State. Like I've said all along, I just think that they're They have more covered. They have more backups. They have more depth than what Charlotte does. I think Charlotte may have a great year for them and their standards, but I just don't think that they can handle App State.
I'm going to go Charlotte, and the two reasons. Number one, I think this coach is a very good coach. Number two, I think some of the players that they brought in are definitely better than what they had. And Charlotte's schedule is brutal. So, I think maybe they win 4 or 5 games this year at best. I think their over might be 2 or 3. But I'm going to go Charlotte in that one. Georgia Tech, Colorado. We talked about Deion Sanders losing a couple of his best players. Georgia Tech is definitely a team on the rise.
Game is where?
It's in Colorado, and Georgia Tech is laying 4.5.
Just like the heat is real, the altitude is real. Georgia Tech, going to Colorado, better be in shape. Colorado last year, they won some good games, but they didn't beat anybody special. In the big games that they had, they lost. They don't have their starting quarterback, Deion. I like him, but I'm not a big fan on their talent yet, and who they have. So I'm taking Georgia Tech.
I'm going to go Colorado only because they got the transfer quarterback from Liberty, who I like a lot. Deion has done a great job recruiting. Their defense, both of their lines have been awful. So I'm hoping that he's improved that because, Shador last year ran for his life every single play. My brain tells me Georgia Tech, but Deion also started off 2 years ago with a huge win at TCU in the first game at Colorado. This is at home. They asked Deion about the traditions of Colorado, about this, and he goes, "Well, I'll tell you the one thing that we have during the game. This tradition is when the second quarter starts, the entire stadium smells like weed." And so that's one tradition they got.
Well,
so
maybe Georgia Tech, might be so high that they can't compete.
The weed,
yeah, that's right.
It's legal there, so maybe that helps them. All right, game 3. Let's go Auburn Baylor. At Baylor, Auburn's -1.
I'm taking Auburn, SEC all day. Don't know much about Baylor.
Look, Baylor's a good team. It wouldn't surprise you if they beat them.
I told Charlie this morning. There's about 2 or 3 things about Baylor. One, their basketball team commits murder. 2, Brittany Griner, she still is a man. And number 3, RG3 is maybe the only player to ever come out of there.
Yeah.
And number 4 was that guy with no shirt. That the biggest man in captivity that
was a beast in college.
Looked like a Zeus out there.
Huge in college football. All right, we got Alabama, Florida State at Florida State. Alabama laying 13.5.
Ooh, Alabama at Florida State.
Mm-hmm.
I think DeBoer gets it done. I'm not sold on this transfer portal and building your whole team on that. I still think there'll be some selfishness. I like Alabama in that one.
I think Alabama rolls. I think that's out of all these games, I think that's got the biggest chance to be an upset. This one,
biggest upset, or
about biggest blowout. LSU, Clemson. We talked about it. 7:30 Saturday night. Clemson's -4.5.
Clemson's -4.5. I'm taking LSU in the spread.
Me too.
But I do think Clemson wins the game.
I agree with it. We're on the same page on that one. Notre Dame, Miami. Notre Dame is at Miami -2.5.
Bet the house on Notre Dame.
I'm with you.
Bet the house on Notre Dame. I'm 100% bought into, their coach, their program, and the type of players that they are getting to compete. Speed, healthy, just looking to bounce back after last year. That has been in their crawl all off season and motivated them. I think Notre Dame is going to be one of the top 5 teams in the country this year.
I agree with you. I think that Notre Dame's running back room could be the best in the country. Jeremiah Love, I think, is the best running back. And I think with rain in the forecast, thunderstorms in the forecast, I think the running game, you lean on it. And I think Notre Dame has one of the best offensive lines. So I'm with you. I think Notre Dame covers that spread. And then finally, the one we just talked about, TCU at Carolina. TCU right now is a 3.5-point favorite.
TCU at Carolina. I'm taking TCU all day. Carolina, they're going to be improved, but they still can't stop anybody when it counts. Belichick isn't going to be able to make tackles. He can put the guys in position, but they still got to make the plays. I'm not sure if they have enough talent on the defensive side to match the Big Ten, the SEC, or even some of the top teams in the ACC. I'm
going to take Carolina. I've bought into the Belichick deal. He's brought in so many good players. I think that you're right. Players have to make plays, but I think this is going to be the first time in a long time that Carolina's going to have a coach that puts the players in the position to make these plays. I think a lot of times they're out of position, and I think the coaching will make a difference here. I think Belichick has brought in a lot of studs in the portal. He's flipped a lot of recruits from big-time schools to Carolina. So I'm going to go Carolina on that, getting the 3.5. I don't know if they win, but I think, like the Clemson game, I think it'll be a good game. game.
Well, the last game, I don't know if you have it on there or not, but I want to talk about that South Carolina game.
Oh, I meant to add that.
Yeah,
You're right.
South Carolina game is a huge game. The
UNC
SEC
at Virginia Tech.
It's in Georgia, actually.
Correct. Playing Virginia Tech.
But it's at the Georgia Dome,
Let me get the
whatever
spread
they call
real quick.
it. Yeah.
Let me get the updated spread.
It's
7.5 South Carolina.
7.5 South Carolina. I think this is a lock 'em pick of the week. Bet your house on it. Take South Carolina. I think they blow them out by 21 at least. The other one that I said earlier is 2. I don't know how Notre Dame's only 2.5. It must be the factor of the heat that Vegas is aware about.
And Miami's good. Listen, Miami's okay. Top 10 team.
But they're not Notre Dame. They don't have that quality and that depth. Those are the two games. Notre Dame is a lock for me, and so is South Carolina.
Well, there's two games that I'll lean on last year on. So both South Carolina and Virginia Tech have gotten off. They've notoriously have gotten off to slow starts, right? I know last year, I think South Carolina's first game, they struggled with Old Dominion, came back and won there at the end. Virginia Tech has lost some awful games early on in the season. I think they might have lost to Old Dominion.
So which team is not going to suck the most?
Well, which team gets off? Like we're going to talk to Joe Persons here next about how important it is to get off to a good start. I agree, and same thing with Notre Dame. Listen, a big game for game one is no big deal to Notre Dame. They played Michigan game one for so long, or game two. Last year, they beat Texas A&M at Texas A&M with 112,000 people there. So I don't think the moment's going to be too big. They're coming off, like you said, playing in the national championship in the playoffs. So I think both those teams, if Notre Dame's used to it, if South Carolina can get over that hump, get off to a good start, and I think they will. I agree with you. I agree. So out of those games, real quick, pick one that's your guaranteed deadlock of the week.
Notre Dame.
I'm with you. All right. Well, we agreed on that. That's not too bad. After this, we're going to come right back. Joe Persons from The Athletic.
It's here, baby.
It's
football.
Here, man. We just got to talk college football, which is a blessing in itself. But now we're talking Panthers. Panthers have their first game a week from this Sunday at Jacksonville, where the Heat's going to play into that as well. I know we'll talk to Joe about that too. Joe Persons from The Athletic. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Suit Up Sports. DJ the Suit Stout along with Frank Garcia. And now we go to our NFL Panther guru, Joe Persons from The Athletic. Joe, how you doing?
Good, man. It's been this is like taking it back about 10 years down at the FNZ studios.
Yeah, it is. We try to keep as much of the FNZ stuff going as we can with some new twists and probably a little more opinionated views than maybe.
Yeah, I think the only thing different is we got a little bit more gray hairs. Well, not DJ, but and wrinkles. He can account for that, test for that.
Yeah, the hair was gone well before FNZ, or at least when I was an intern, maybe. But so Joe, you're doing yard work today instead of having to cover Panthers. What do you prefer, the yard work or sitting out in the hot weather watching the Panthers practice?
You know what's crazy? You guys live here. This was like a completely unseasonably cool training camp. Like, yeah, it was nothing like what Frank had to deal with in Spartanburg, man.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's one of the big changes, obviously, the Panthers have made over the last couple of years is, with the new ownership, they brought the camp back to Charlotte here. And I remember back in the day with those dorm rooms, and I'm sure you do as well, the local establishments in Spartanburg and, some of the stories that we could tell from those days.
You know what, Frank, you're right. And I kind of miss it. I mean, I at least for that first weekend. In fact, I was up there a couple weekends ago with my kid. He was going to a baseball camp at Wofford. And it was cool being back in Spartanburg. They built a brand new, this was not on campus, but they built a brand new downtown baseball stadium for their minor league team. And, I'm sure players, though, were happy to have camp right here in Charlotte.
Well, one of the things that we would do, and we kind of grew closer because of it, was, like you said, there wasn't a whole lot to do back then. So, it kind of forced us to hang out and learn, one another outside the football field. I think that's kind of, gone a little way by the wayside for a lot of teams as they bring their camps back home. But, talking about the closeness and the leadership with this team, for me, it's kind of one of the things that I really need to hopefully see them grow, because there's some new players, there's some veteran players, but guys like Bryce Young coming into his own, Taylor Moton on the offensive line. You remember back in the day with Khalil and Gross and, the groups that they would have going into, play cards every night and in those motorhomes and drinking beers and doing all the things that, that they would do. And then, even back in my days, going out to dinner and, the video games in the dorm rooms and things like that. Those things are kind of gone now, but leadership really is one of the things that I'm questioning and concerned about. Who's going to be and step up, be the leaders and the identity of this team?
Yeah, it's a great question. I will say that continuity on the offensive line this year, I think, is going to be key. I mean, they brought back their top 9 offensive linemen, which is pretty unheard of, as you guys know.
Yeah.
And all 9 of them, of course, made the 53. And already that depth is kind of coming in handy. Ike Ekwonu has the emergency appendectomy last weekend. I'd kind of be surprised if he plays week 1. Damian Lewis, he's missed the last couple of weeks with a shoulder, but I do think he's going to play at Jacksonville. But to your point, Frank, I think that group, Austin Corbett is a leader of men. That group gets together, not Wofford, a little different, but they get together once a week for a big old meal and put a hurting on somebody's head. But I wonder too. I asked this question. You guys remember when they moved on from Steve Smith in 2014? Dave Gettleman did, and a big part of that was to kind of open up the offensive side of the room, leadership-wise, to give Cam kind of space to develop into his own deal and his unique. I don't think that was the case this year with Bryce. I mean, Bryce is not, he's a different kind of leader than Cam, but certainly with Adam gone, somebody like Bryce, and I mean, really should be Bryce, needs to be a stronger voice on that side of the room.
Yeah, and with Adam getting traded, and we'll talk about that, but I thought his comments about Bryce when he was in Minnesota at the press conference yesterday, they were very glowing about Bryce, and he had nothing but great things to say about his leadership and the way he finished the year after coming back from adversity last year. So hopefully he does step into that role, and Adam seems to think he will. Let's talk about Adam. So it sounds like, Minnesota contacts Dan about trading for him. Adam was pretty adamant about going back home and finishing his career in Minnesota, where he grew up and where he started. Dan wasn't going to give him away, and it did. I guess that's why it did take some time to get the 4th round pick that he wanted and trade him on his terms, but also do right by the player, which, you don't really hear that anymore. And I thought some of Dan's comments yesterday were kind of refreshing because, you see what went on in Dallas with Micah Parsons and that whole, debacle. But with Adam being gone, Jalen Coker, Dan said he'll step into that slot role. I think that it's going to be a heck of a move. I think getting a 4th round pick for a 35-year-old, saving $9 or $10 million, and then getting your young stud and Coker, who flashed a lot last year when given a chance. I think he'll step right in, and I think it'll make the offense even more dynamic.
I like Coker a lot. I mean, that guy. Maybe not the fastest guy, but he's not slow. Maybe not the biggest guy, but he's not small, but he has a knack of just coming down with the football, especially on those kind of jump ball situations. But he really, body positioning is a big thing for him, like back shoulder throws. He and Bryce really developed the chemistry pretty quickly last year when Adam was out with that hamstring injury.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I like how Dan handled this. I mean, first of all, this is not the first time in Thielen's couple years he was here that teams sniffed around. I mean, this was a team that was not doing very well. I think Adam was a little frustrated at times himself with losing and kind of knowing he was at the end, nearing the end of the rope here. And so I don't, the other times teams would call, I think Morgan would just, say it was like, we'll give you a 6th rounder and we want you to eat half the money. And Dan was like, yeah, no, thanks. And
yeah.
But this one, like you said, DJ, I think he really, and Canales too, wanted to do right by the player. And, they used 2 first-round picks the last 2 years on McMillan and Leggett. And so let's go. It's their time, and we'll see what they can do.
Yeah, and there's been a lot said that I've read and heard analysts talk about how the Panthers are almost following the Sean Payton, Drew Brees model, where Drew Brees was a smaller quarterback but very accurate, and they surrounded him with taller, athletic receivers, to help him see over the line or whatever the case may be. And it looks like that's what Dan's done with 6'4" McMillan, Xavier's 6'2", Coker I guess is around 6'1" ish.
Yeah, more like 6'2".
6'2". So it looks like they're following, that model. So I don't think that'll hurt. And if Bryce, starts the year like he finished last year, then I think they'll be okay. Let's jump to the defensive side of the ball, because I know one of the things that Frank and I have talked about, and Frank's really harped on it, and for good reason, is the middle linebacker spot on defense. You've got Trevin Wallace, you've got Roseman, who they brought in. Are you as worried about that as we are, or do you think those guys, with the defensive line being improved, they'll be able to run around and make more plays?
You know what? I asked Derek Brown a version of that question this week, and he said that, and this is probably an old-time football adage, first time I've heard it. He said, in our defensive line room, he said, we talk about keeping the tackles in our room. Like, if it's getting to the second level, then we didn't do our job. Now, obviously, that's not going to happen every play. I'm not suggesting that. But right. Yeah, I do have some concerns that they show up to camp, and at first day, they're releasing Josie Jewell with the concussions symptoms, and that he sadly never was able to clear from last year. And that was already a thin group in my mind with Josie Jewell. And so, there clearly wasn't anyone on the waiver wire that really did much for Morgan, or I think he would have brought. I thought he was going to add there, but I mean, if you're getting they claimed 6 guys last year, as y'all know, when they had the number 1 spot in the order. None of those 6 guys are even here anymore. So I mean, it isn't like that. That's like the panacea. But yeah, if there's one area of concern on defense, well, I think there's a couple. I mean, I'm still not convinced they're going to have a real effective pass rush. The back end, I'm okay with. I think. I mean, I'll tell you, Merrick and Ransom, man, they will come up and hit guys.
Yep.
I do think there'll be times when they kind of get beaten over the top, but defense, honestly, other than probably J.C. Horn, I like Mike Jackson, Derek Brown. They've got pieces, but boy, you wonder how much they can really improve in one offseason.
Well, and especially being as far down as they were last year, Joe, historically one of the worst defenses, in the history of the NFL. They couldn't get off the field on third down. We saw it bite them in the butt, against Philadelphia, against the Kansas City Chiefs, a couple other games where the offense really kind of held up their end of the stick, but the defense let them down a little bit. When you start looking at, the direction of this team, Bill Walsh said, many, many years ago, he would rather let players go a couple of years early or a year early than, hold them a year late. And he, we all have friend chats and rooms that we talk with and discuss trades. And, when something big happens with the Panthers, I like the direction of this team. I like that they've built on the defensive side a younger, faster team. I don't know who the playmakers are going to be on this defense. You look at Derek Brown, he doesn't strike me as a Warren Sapp or a Aaron Donald type of player. He's more of a big physical guy that's going to hold a point. You're not going to run the ball to his side, but he's not going to make a lot of plays away from the ball either. Who's the guys on this defense that we expect to step up on third down, or is it going to be by committee? Because you can create pressure one of two ways: either a guy, with personnel going out there and beating their guys one-on-one, or a creative defensive mind that's going to be able to generate some pressures and get sacks that way.
Yeah, you bring up a couple good points. Part of the problem third down last year, you guys know this. It's like third and short. They get gashed on the ground first and second down, and so they I think Clowney did what he could. I mean, at the age he was, and at some point it kind of felt like he was pretty checked out, or at least it was hard playing on a team like Anyway, I'm digressing. So, playmakers defensively. I like the Merritt kid a lot. I mean, I think they're going to get him involved some in the blitz game. He can play back. He can play up near the line of scrimmage. Tackle stats I know can get overrated, but he had a big number up at or around 100, I think, last year with the Raiders. I like DJ Wanham's game. I mean, we'll see if he can do it over the course of a whole season, because he came in last year. Y'all remember he had the health issue where he had quad surgery, and then that got infected and this and that. And he gave them a lift the second half of the year. He's I mean, I don't know that they have a guy at pass rusher. I like Scorton. We should mention Nick Scorton too. He's a dude that looks, guys, like he can stop the run and also get after the passer. I'm really curious to see how he shows up in games.
Yeah. And what about Pat Jones? I mean, you're talking about the rush. I mean, I think he had 6 or 7 sacks last year. Athletic, seems to be a very aggressive type of player. With those 4 guys, and I'm including also Princely, who I can never say his last name right, Uman Mielen. I don't know if I'm close, but
Uman Mielen.
Uman Mielen. I'm gonna have to.
God, you actually said it right.
I was close. I just call him Princely. But with those 4 guys, with 2 veterans and Jones and Wanham, and then Scorton and Princely, you think those guys will get rotated pretty evenly? I mean, you think all 4 are going to play a lot?
I think so. And I think Frank said it best, that this probably is a by committee deal when you're looking for pass rush.
Mm-hmm.
And Frank said this too. I mean, Derek Brown, I think is a terrific player. And he, had that Pro Bowl season in 2023, had more tackles than any defensive lineman. I know this is a stat that hadn't been kept for ages and ages, but still 100+ tackles. And he can blow up a backfield in the run game. You don't necessarily see that, though, in his game as a pass rusher. So,
right.
If they can improve on first and second down, I do think it gives Ejiro a little more ammo and to be creative and do some things in the blitz game. That is not a big part of his scheme, but at least he'd have that ability to do it, where before it was just kind of holding on for dear life at 3rd and 3 or 2nd and 3. So.
Do you think Ransom will be the second safety starting, or do you think they'll start Scott and then kind of rotate those guys in as well with Richardson?
Feels like Ransom's going to be the guy.
Nice.
Maybe Scott gets the week 1 start, but I don't know. Hearing Canales and Morgan talk about Lathan Ransom, I think that move's coming sooner rather than later.
Joe, let's move back to the offense side. And, I know that's a big year for Bryce Young, but a quarterback's best friend is a running back. And for some reason, especially with this offense, with all the young players on the offensive side, the receivers and, Bryce, they're the offense, they're getting the focal point of all the attention. But the guy that's always left out for some reason, and I think he's probably one of the best up-and-coming young backs in the league. And I didn't realize how big he was until you look at the stats, and I didn't realize how fast he was until you watch him on film. Chuba Hubbard, got a good contract last year, but he's quietly been, I think, the best player, the most consistent player on this offense since he's been here.
Frank, nobody talks about him. I'm raising my hand. I'm trying, as you were discussing that, I was trying to think back if I did any big pieces on him this camp, and I didn't. I remember when he signed that extension last year, before they went to Germany. Like a week later, he had a big game. They were back home. I guess it was after the bye. Whenever it was within a week or two of that contract. I ran into Jonathan Stewart, and he said they got a bargain.
Mm-hmm.
You watch with these running back salaries start spiking, and they have. And Chuba got paid, but I think Stu was right on, man. That guy, and Dan Morgan said this week too, in talking about the Taylor Moton deal. He said, he kind of looked into the camera. Dan isn't really this kind of guy. I mean, he wasn't like trying to sell a used car, but he did say, yeah, this was Thursday of this week before Labor Day. He said I want our guys to know that if you're a good player and you do things the right way, we are going to reward you. And since Dan and this crew, Brant Tillis and Canales, came in, we saw them take care of Derek Brown. We saw them take care of Chuba. We saw them take care of Taylor Moton. And I mean, Icky's next. I'm probably forgetting someone, but it's, and back to Chuba, Frank, the last really big story I did on him was last training camp. And it was all about how I had to sit out there to get this. And this was the whole point of the story. I had to sit out there under a tent for like 45 minutes. And this was a hot day. And Chuba and Tommy Tremble are the last ones coming off the field, catching, 500, 300 passes coming out of the jugs, whatever it was. And that was one kind of chink in his armor early in his career. And he didn't like having any chinks. And he's just, you're right. There's not nearly enough being said about Chuba Hubbard.
It's funny because, everybody has their fantasy football drafts coming up. And as you're researching and as you're reading, he's not even in anyone's like top 15 running back list. And the Panthers running back room in general gets very little respect. And they're the only team, I believe, in the NFL that have 2,000-yard rushers in the backfield. And then you add in Etienne, who I think is going to add a whole different aspect.
Well, let's not forget also, I mean, everybody, like I said, everybody's talking about these young receivers, Tet and, Leggett and all the other players that they have. But I think the way that those players are going to get open is run first, play action, throw the ball down the field to big physical guys, very similar to what the Panthers offense looked like with Jake Delhomme.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Speaking of Tet and Joe, obviously you've been to all the practices and the fans weren't able to get out there and see it, in person this year. And then obviously with the preseason games, it was kind of limited. But what are your thoughts on Tet? After seeing him through training camp every day and then the couple preseason games, there were a lot of people that were surprised that the Panthers went receiver there instead of maybe a Jalen Walker or somebody like that. You think he's a real deal? Are you excited about seeing what he brings to the offense?
Yeah. Hey, real quick, I want to go back on what Frank was talking about. I don't know if you guys have seen many of the interviews but the guards that they brought in last year, which by the way was kind of the Saints model with Breeze too, to build up that inner pocket for them.
Yep.
But those they're two different types of personalities. Rob Hunt, man, he is the life of the party. He's loud. He's kind of vulgar. He doesn't give a shit if the camera's
he's an old school old lineman.
and Damian Lewis is just kind of like, he just shows up, lunch pail, doesn't talk. But those two and Corbett in the middle of that line should be able to set a pretty good run foundation for Chuba. Back on McMillan, here's what I noticed the first week of camp, at least, week and a half. Whenever that dude came up for one-on-ones, Ajero, hell, it was probably being dictated by the offensive coaches. They had J.C. Horn or Mike Jackson up, pressed on him at the line of scrimmage because he didn't see a lot of that at Arizona. He's not a big physical guy like Leggett. I mean, he's long and leaner, and that was a knock on him. I think Steve Smith and other people talked about that.
Yeah,
and he struggled. Like there was a day I remember Mike Jackson, Tet ended up on the ground within a yard and a half of the line of scrimmage, and they just kept feeding him that. And I remember asking, I think it was Canales, about that, and he said, "Yeah, I mean that's one. He's got to see that." But then the other thing, somebody told me, I forget it was Canales or Morgan or who, that they're going to have ways to scheme him off of that press coverage, whether it's putting him in motion or getting him in the slot some. And because I do still think he's a really gifted dude. Like he has that catch radius that is sick. He has a real way of plucking the ball, kind of like I was talking about with Jalen Coker and what they need to see more of with Leggett. But I do think that press coverage on him and really any kind of physical stuff, he's going to have to work through that early in his career.
Well, here's the old saying, Joe, is your strengths get you to the NFL, but working on your weaknesses keep you in the NFL. And, in order to be successful, everybody is always going to make you play to your weakness. Yep. So if you're not working on those things, like sounds like they were doing with Tet, you're not going to be a starter or a impact player very long. And obviously the first rounders, the guys that are impactful, don't have many weaknesses, like what you just talked about with Chuba. He worked on that, and that's what's going to keep him in the NFL and get him paid. Talk about Bryce Young real quick, because I think this is a huge year for him. Pro Bowl players, good players are good players. Pro Bowl players, are going to help you win games, but first rounders and number one overall picks are supposed to help other players get better. I don't feel like Bryce was the number one overall pick. I'll say that till the day I die, just because I don't think he provides that Cam Newton type of impact. He's not going to help other guys get him better. He needs other guys in order for him to be better. I think he's a good player, don't get me wrong, but to be that number one overall guy, you're supposed to come in and have that impact. He has had that at times, and then he's fallen off, and then he's come back. This is a huge year for him, and I think the entire future of this program, this organization, rely on him being that guy that's going to make guys around him better.
Yeah, you're right, Frank. And look, look at what they've done the last couple off seasons. We talked about the offensive line in 2024, Morgan's first year. They got that corrected for Bryce. Then they brought in, like I said, first round picks. They could have gone out and gotten an edge rusher at 8 this year. They go get McMillan, and so at some point, we saw glimpses of it last year. In fairness to Bryce, like that, those were some against some good teams. Like he had the offense and his team in position to beat the Chiefs at home and beat the Eagles on the road. And neither of those happened. Obviously, the defense played a part in that. But I can't agree with you more. I mean, this is year 3 of a guy you picked number 1. We got to see it right from the jump. It can't be like, oh, well, he played well down the stretch. Yeah. Every quarterback's going to have their bad days. I get it. But he's got to start stacking big games just on top of each other. And, they've given him the pieces. I mean, we didn't even talk about Rico Dowdle. You mentioned DJ, the tight end position that, I like Sanders, but they don't have like a Greg Olsen there. But other than that, the pieces should be in place. And now it's on Bryce in year 3, and let's see it.
What do you think about the punt return, kickoff return? I know Etienne is a guy they talked about. Jimmy Horn Jr. made the 53-man roster, and I know he's a guy that they're excited about maybe doing that. Do you think both those guys are going to split that, or have they named who will be the starter there?
You mentioned Etienne, right?
Yep.
Okay, good. It was cutting up on me a little bit. Yeah. I think he's the guy that they're going to roll out there first, just based on what I saw at practice and in preseason games. And he did a couple things. Like he had one long run. It might have been the first preseason game, one long return, I should say, that got called back. So that's another thing we probably haven't talked enough about is this whole how teams are approaching the new kickoff rules. And there's going to be more opportunities because you bang it into the end zone and you're giving that team the ball at the 35. Yeah. I had somebody tell me that like the Eagles, they view that as like a turnover. Like if they get the ball at the 35, especially with the tush push, it's like 4 down territory.
Yeah.
Like, all right, we're 4th and 1 at our own 44 after you kick it into the end zone. We're going for it.
Yeah.
And so the Panthers all summer, and every team, but some teams were doing it a little differently. They were trying to have their kickers land that ball and get it kind of knuckling right at the 19. And so all of which to say is you got to have a guy like Etienne. He's got to be sure-handed because that ball might be knuckling around on the ground.
Yeah.
Whoever you got back there, it isn't just like plucking it out of the air, 2 yards deep in the end zone.
Well, to your point, playing with Dom Capers as the head coach, he was he made sure we were very aware of the analytics when it comes to the ball on the 20 versus the ball on the 25 or the 30 or the 35, and how the percentages change when it comes to scoring, kicking field goals, or scoring touchdowns. So, we were very aware of that as players back in the day. And it sounds like that's kind of what they're bringing back, with those analytics. And we're going to just play the percentages and try to get it to inside the 20 and, make you drive the distance of the field. Speaking of head coaches, with Dom Capers, not Dom Capers, but Dave Canales, we don't get to see the personality of these guys all the time as much maybe as you do, because you're an insider. You get to go to practice. Ron Rivera was very stoic on the sidelines, just didn't really say much. But he's not that same guy, that he was on the sidelines or in press conferences as he was on the field or in those locker rooms. He had that fire that was, made him play that outside linebacker for the Bears when he would speak to the guys or, get on them. We don't get to see that. Dave Canales doesn't strike me as a fiery guy that's going to come down with the wrath of God on you if you make a mistake and get on your butt and chew your tail. He's just going to be, one of those guys. Tell us about Dave Canales, because I'm still on the fence of, do I love this guy or do I like this guy, because of some of the decisions he's made in the preseason of not playing Stewart or not playing Bryce and some of the starters. I'm not sure where I fall on him yet.
He is definitely, it's no surprise at all that, when you hear about his background with Pete Carroll, because he is from that tree. I mean, he spent 13 years with Pete. Mm-hmm. And he is, and I think some of this was Canales' personality anyway, but he is all about building guys up and rather than tearing them down and just positive. And Frank, there have been times I'm like, have I seen this guy ever get pissed off? Like, I've been waiting for it in a press conference. Like, yeah. Sometimes the questioning, you guys know how it is. You keep pressing an issue, and Ron would snap at us. Ron get pissed at me one time asking about Cam and a concussion down in New Orleans, but that's just, and I don't know if it's Canales' personality. I think they probably have some quote unquote bad cops. I hope on the coaching staff, but. If you're being true to yourself, then I think that's all players want. Like, if all of a sudden Canales started trying to be a hard ass, and that's right. Not really, you know what I mean? And Frank can speak.
You're going to find the fake real easy.
Right. And I think I've asked people, I said, is he really like this all the time? Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, we'll see. I mean, I guess there was a couple things I thought in training camp where I thought he kind of got as edgy as maybe I've seen him, and maybe he'll grow.
Gosh darn it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Certainly doesn't use the same vocabulary that we use. Joe, give us a couple names of players that we haven't talked about that maybe the average, fan hasn't heard about much that you think could flash or make a difference on the team once we get into the season.
Well, we hadn't talked about Turk Wharton. I mean, they spent a decent amount of change on him after they missed out on Milton Williams. And it's funny, guys. Like, I don't know what I was expecting with Turk Wharton. I looked at his height and weight, but you see him, and he is not long. He has short arms. He has short legs. But he did some nice things at a good organization for the Chiefs. Mm-hmm. And I know they had Chris Jones taking some blocking, a lot of blocking away from Turk Wharton, but yeah. Derek Brown might do that here. And so he's a name that I think could flash for these guys. And he does we've talked about that, not interior pass rush, not being exactly Brown's calling card. Wharton can do some of that. So that's a name on offense. JT Sanders, let's talk about the tight end. He came back. I think his rookie year, he was on pace to do some nice things. He flips on his head against the Chiefs, injures his neck. Luckily escaped serious injury, but he wasn't really the same after that. I think two guys they challenged were Coker and Sanders to just like, hey, man, this is the NFL. You guys are good players, but you got to kind of take your training up a notch. And damn if both of those guys didn't show back up in a lot better shape. So, I don't think Sanders is necessarily the next coming of Greg Olsen. Mm-hmm. But But if they can get him on some mismatches, on seam routes against linebackers, I mean, he can get some big plays.
Do you think Mitchell, the tight end from Notre Dame, the rookie will get any playing time? I know he had a decent training camp.
Yeah, Mitchell Evans had a decent camp. He feels like more of a possession guy, maybe in the red zone, but I think Tremble and Sanders are going to get the bulk of those reps.
You know, Joe, I have two different sides of me. I'm sure like we all do. I have, after talking to DJ and, doing this podcast, I feel like the Panthers are going to the Super Bowl, right? I mean, he's one of those optimistic guys that everything that we do is going to pan out and we've made the best moves in the world. That's the fan in him and me, kind of talking. But then there's the reality knocking on the other side. And the reality of it is this team isn't really, in comparison, much better than and more improved than any other team in the league, right? So where are we going to make those jumps and where are we going to make those differences? I think, again, like as we point back to Bryce Young, that's where he can be the biggest difference maker. But ultimately, when you look at this team, it's a 6-win team, 7-win team at best. I know we play in a poor division, maybe one of the weaker divisions in football with some teams struggling. Atlanta's, right there with a young quarterback. Tampa Bay with Baker has obviously stepped up, but the Saints are kind of falling down. Where do the Panthers fall in the big picture?
Well, I mean, Vegas usually doesn't get it wrong by much, and they've got that over-under at 6.5. When the schedules came out in May, the Athletic wanted us all to immediately pick their final record. I picked them 8-9. I thought 2 wins. They went from 2 to 5 in Canales' first year. Maybe they go from 5 to 8 in the second year. And I think that, honestly, that's probably the high water mark as I watch this team in the preseason. I don't know. I mean, I'm with you, Frank. I think there are some nice pieces there. And I think, they could surprise some people. But go from I don't, and I know there's a team like that every year that goes, from worst to first or gets themselves in the playoffs. But I don't know. I even asked Morgan this week. I said, you move on from Thielen. You've got 11 rookies on the 53, eight drafted guys, 3 undrafted guys, including the kicker. Are you really kind of looking more to like 26 is your window? And of course he said no. And obviously that they need, and we've talked about this, that this is such an important year for Bryce.
Yeah.
I mean, what are they going to pay him? Is he going to get a second contract here? I mean, it's important for him, but it's also important for the entire franchise. So no, you cannot, obviously you're not flushing this year. But they got to start fast. I mean, the way Bryce played those first 2 games last year and just the way they played overall, getting blown out down in New Orleans and then coming home and getting blown out. I mean, you give some fans some hope, give the locker room, have guys totally committed if you're winning early.
Isn't that the difference between a guy like Cam Newton in his first couple of seasons versus Bryce? And to me, that's what I would go back to the point I made earlier. That's what a number 1 pick is supposed to do. He's supposed to give you hope as a fan group that this is going to be the next stepping stone, because he's already shown in 1 and 2 that we have something there. And all we need to do is give him a couple pieces and we're going to the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. I just don't feel that way with Bryce.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a smaller sample size. You got to go back and you got to watch the Chiefs game, the Eagles game, the Falcons game, but there were some stinkers in there. A lot, he didn't play very well against Dallas in the loss here, but that's all you got to hope on. I mean, that's the upside, that the reason you drafted him. And Dan Morgan was the assistant GM then, but he had a strong voice in that decision. You got to see this out now, right? I mean, at least for this year. And Bryce, you're absolutely right, Frank. I mean, he could not be more different than Cam, but he also's got a little more swag than he shows. Like Well, I heard him barking at J.C. Horn back and forth early in camp this year, and I'd like to hear that.
Yeah,
and he apparently plays a good amount of basketball and talks a lot of trash there. Like, I'd like to see a little more of that. Not that like talking it, but just the way.
Well, you saw the gunshot or whatever, and
Yes.
Or the touchdown. That's the swagger, right? That we're used to. When you're feeling who you are as a player. You're throwing. Steph Curry when he's playing golf and he hits the shot. He knows he's hit a shot, right? Or when he's playing basketball, he's already pointing out and walking the other way before the ball even goes in. You hope that Bryce can continue to grow with those types of feelings, because that's what it's going to take for him to really, come to being the player that we expect him to be.
And a lot of that does come with how he plays. I mean, listen, Joe, you brought it up. I mean, the last two seasons, if I'm not mistaken, the first game of the last 2 years, his first pass was an interception. I think against the Falcons in his first ever start, and then against New Orleans last year. So they've got to get off to a quicker start in their first 4 games, at Jacksonville, at Arizona, home against Atlanta, and then at New England. That's not an easy, you think Jacksonville's certainly a winnable game, even though I think Jacksonville whooped them last year in Jacksonville. And I know it's
the heat in that game is indescribable.
Is going to be tough. And Frank's talked about that quite a bit. Arizona is much improved, and we've seen to have their number over the years for some reason, but they're going to be a much better team this year. Falcons are very similar to the Panthers, where they had an awful defense, rebuilt it. They've got a good young quarterback. So I think, those two teams are very similar, on paper at least, but obviously a rivalry. And then New England is going to, from everything you read and watch, they're going to be a lot better. And obviously they're going to be better. They've got Vrabel there now. So the first 4 games are certainly not easy, but you can look at it and say, okay, if they can come out of here with 2 wins, I think we'll all be happy. But I think if Bryce gets off to a good start, to your point, hopefully we will see some of that swagger. But you got to play good to show it. You can't throw 2 picks and sit there doing all this. Well, Cam might do it, but there wasn't many.
You can't be the player that's doing the warm on the field after you're down 35-7 and you score your first touchdown.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Listen, I hear what you're saying, DJ, but that schedule gets a little saltier late in the year. I think
it does.
This is not exactly murderer's row. I mean,
that's true.
I'm not suggesting they're going to go 4-0, but you're right. I mean, if you can at least, be 2-2, and then it's like, okay, all right, we're feeling a little bit better about things this year.
Yeah, no doubt. Joe, thanks for joining us. I want to ask you one quick question before you go. I know you're a big craft beer guy, and I'm more of the bourbon and guy, and Frank, I think, mixes it all up.
I'm a little bit of everything. I'm whatever's free and tastes good.
What's your craft beers of choice lately? Anything new that people should check out?
So what I've been drinking some down here is there's a really great brewery, Maine Brewing Company. And they weren't distributing down here until about a year or 2 ago. And they're not a sponsor, so I won't mention where I get it. They have all their beers are named after whales, being from Maine. Yeah. And they have a couple of IPAs, Maine Lunch, which apparently is the name of a whale, and then Maine Dinner, which is a double IPA. Those things that usually I've had a double IPA. You drink a double IPA and it's almost, you just sort of taste the alcohol. Not on this one. It is smooth. And that's my plug. I hope Maine Brewing Company hears this and sends me a case of free beer.
Well, I want to know. You asked him the question about beer. I want to know what keeps that salad looking so good on top of his head.
I know. I mean, man. That's some
prime salad right there. What type of gel do you use? I mean, he's got the grays nice and blended. I mean, he's still got that thing 15 years later, as prime as ever.
Frank, it was funny. These guys, these other media this week were giving me crap about my hair. And funny thing is, man, I don't spend a lot of money on it. My 18-year-old son started telling me about this woman at Sports Clips. And I was like, I don't know. Those places are usually
hit or miss.
But this woman, you got to get on their app. And you got to jump in there at 5 after 9 in the morning, or you're waiting an hour and a half.
Yeah, Joe just likes the massage, the VIP, or what do they call it? The whatever they call it.
The MVP.
Don't be lumping me in any massage talk. After what covered Sean Watson's deal a few years ago.
No doubt. I haven't had a haircut that I didn't do myself in about 20 years, so I can't relate. And Joe, I don't know if you know this, but your wife was actually my stepson's teacher, I think in 5th grade at Dilworth Elementary. And
I know.
And that was a long time ago. He's a senior in high school now, so time flies.
It was longer than that. It was 1st grade, dude.
1st grade, man.
Wow.
Holy smokes. Yeah, he's a senior now and or older two in college, so time flies by. But
great catching up with you, bud.
Yeah, Joe, thanks for joining us, man. We'll get you on again during the season, and stay cool in Jacksonville. Maybe we get lucky and they get some of this nice weather we've had here, but I doubt it.
Hey, this was a treat, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Joe.